Good evening. Welcome to the 2nd District. And even though this is a meeting that I've called as 2nd District Councilman, I believe tonight the police department will be making some important announcements concerning strategy going forward. I want you to know that one of the most weighty responsibilities of any city council is coming up with a budget that addresses the needs of the community. And this council stepped to the plate when we approved a budget that put enough money into the pipeline for 30 more police officers and other and money for more technology, smarter technologies, which will help us to solve crime. And also, the Chief will be talking about some exciting new initiatives that may help us reach our young people who have been involved in way too many crimes, violent crimes. And this is a problem that we have to resolve. As an educator for many years, it is so disheartening to see this happening in a community I've lived in all my life. But 2022, I believe, will be the year for the great turnaround. God knows we've been through a lot together, and we're going to get through this crisis as well. It's a public safety crisis, make no mistake about it. But we have smart strategies of dealing with it. I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight. This is being put out for viewing purposes, and we have tried to separate the chairs to adhere to the guidelines, 6 feet, and the masking mandate, etc. I thank my colleagues from the City Council for coming. Councilor Beth Jensen over here, Zach Euler, I believe. Zach, can you raise your hand toward the back of the room? And of course, Councilor Sid Ruckriegel. Councilor Jackson, are you here? I know she was trying to get here. Of course, the city manager is here, Patrick Urich, and Director of Community Development, Joe Doolin. And Rachel Parker is here from the county, Rachel, and she's a 2nd District resident as well. And we have a lot of our police command here who work very hard for us every single day. Our men and women in blue are out there trying to make a difference. And I believe we will make a difference with some of the strategies that you're going to hear about tonight. We also want, as a result of this meeting, you to have an opportunity to pose some questions. I'm going to ask our Superintendent of Police, Echevarria, to give an overview presentation. He asked to do some PowerPoint. And then, after that is completed, because we have 75 minutes for this meeting, 2nd District meeting, we will allow questions to be taken. And the other thing I want to be sure to say is we want to thank the Monsignor. Monsignor, are you here? There he is, right over there by the door. And Dr. Noreen Dillon, principal of St. Mark's School, for setting this up so beautifully. They sent me pictures the other day of what it looks like. Is this what you want? And opening their facility so graciously during this time of crisis, I believe. We had much the same response with churches out north in the district. That is what is so great about District 2. It is second to none. You've heard me say that over and over again. It's because of the people and the institutions and the way we all stick together to solve problems. Without any further ado, Superintendent Echevarria.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. For the camera, there's a lot of distance, so I'm taking my mask off. So when they criticize me, there's quite a bit of distance here. I want to introduce the officers that came with me. So I have Captain Briggs with me. He oversees all investigations. Lieutenant Keola, who is over special investigations. Lieutenant Rummins, who's on patrol, as well as Lieutenant McCall, who is on patrol. And so at the end of this, they'll be up here with me if there's questions, and they'll have a little bit more of a historical perspective than I have, because I've been here 5 months and they've been here quite a bit longer than that. So ending gun violence, this isn't a new document for us. This is a document that we have looked at here at the police department and we continue to look at since I've been here, and we changed some things, we add some stuff, we remove some stuff, and it's kind of a live document for us. But I think it's appropriate that we share some of this information. There's going to be information on here that I won't share. Some of it is private. We don't want those that are committing crimes to know everything we're doing, essentially. So some things we got to keep close to the chest. So I will proceed, but we titled this "Ending Gun Violence" because that is the goal, right? The goal is to end gun violence. Can we see? So some of our short-term goals, and we're going to just go over this at a high level. We want to make sure that we leave some time at the end to be able, I'm not sure if you guys can see that, so I'll read it to you. Can you guys see it in the back? It looks a little too bright up here, right? So our goal number one, a short-term goal, is this evidence-based enforcement and prevention strategies. And so what we want to do is, what we're using is this information that's listed in the goal, the next goal, number 2, the intelligence gathering and dissemination in our field investigations. We will use that information to do our focus deterrence, our hotspot policing, and data-driven approaches to crime and traffic safety. So when you hear that, we call that our DDAG zone. So where crime and violence intersect is we want to be. So we're looking at evidence-based, data-driven places that we want to be at. We are not just walking into a neighborhood and guessing where somebody's at or where crime is occurring. We're looking at our data. We have ShotSpotter. We know when we come out on a scene and there's shell casings. That's where our evidence is at, and that's where we need to be. And we have maps, and our crime analysts daily updates our maps. We're able to look at it and know exactly where we need to be, what areas we need to be in, and what we need to be doing in those areas. So you know, those are the areas that we are going to be going into. That's where we're going to be seeing. As we move into the new year, we'll be using, so everybody understands, right now we have about 198 officers that are working, probably 175 that are working. We have 198 that would be on the books, if you will. 175 about with COVID, with military, with injuries. That leaves us down to about maybe 175 officers that we could put on the street. But they're all in special divisions. The majority of our group would be patrol. And then we have our as we walk into the new year, we'll be having 3 shifts versus 4 shifts. As in 2021, there was 4 shifts of patrol. We're consolidating that to 3 shifts as we go into 2022, which then gives us a little bit more manpower on each shift to be able to go out there and get some proactive work done, rather reacting to what we're seeing and hearing. So with that, as we go into the new year, we're going to take some manpower from these shifts and essentially create a group of officers that we'll be putting into our investigative division to up that manpower to be able to go into the neighborhoods, go to where the hotspots are, go where the violence is at, where our evidence shows that crime is happening, and go there and do our enforcement in those areas. So that's where we go into intelligence gathering, dissemination, and field investigations. One of the things internally that we are working on, like in any other agency, is we are so busy that we may not communicate certain things to the other divisions that we need to, because we have the street crimes unit out on the street, patrols doing something else, our major crimes unit is doing some other things, and they're so busy. So it's intentionally making sure that we are communicating, that these other shifts are visiting roll calls and passing on information. Where are the stolen cars? What are the stolen cars? Where we last see them? So our hot sheets, if you will. Who are we looking for? Who are some people that have committed some crime that maybe patrol doesn't know that works on midnight shift? And really intentionally making sure that our communication internally is strong and that we're communicating better internally amongst each other. We go to our technology initiative. So today we had a site visit from Flock. If you've listened to the city council meetings, they've approved these LPRs that we'll be getting, license plate recognition cameras. We are having 16 of them. I won't share with you where they're going for obvious reasons, but we have 16 of them going throughout the city. These cameras as well have some other technologies on them, if you will, that will help us with shots that are fired, similar to our shot spotter. It'll help us figure out where vehicles may be or not be. There's some intelligence on the back end of them that may determine if a stolen car drove by them or not. And so this is technology that's going to help us, when things happen, be able to figure out where a vehicle went. It captures images of the vehicle, images of the plate, images of people. And so it's going to be technology that's going to help our detectives be able to follow up on these cases more rapidly and quickly. Along with that, as of January 3rd, Tip 411 will be out. If you're following us on Facebook, you'll see that we've been pushing out this Tip 411 app that's going to come out January 3rd. What that app will do is, we currently have Crime Stoppers. I can't communicate with you on Crime Stoppers. You can share some information that goes to a third party who then sends it to us. Now, we're counting on Crime Stoppers to update things for us. Tip 411 allows us to take control of it, and you as a tipster can send a tip anonymously, and we can respond to the tipster anonymously and start communication. That may include giving them a phone number and saying, if you want to talk to us personally, you can. I can tell you from experience, I've used it, and many a times you're able to text the tipster your name and some information, start some dialogue, and eventually be able to talk to them and build a quick relationship where then you can really get some information and start getting more information that we need to close some of these cases or some of the crimes that we're seeing. It's no secret that the community knows. If we can look on our social media, we have pictures of people with guns, our juveniles out there with guns, juveniles in stolen vehicles. We see it on social media. If we're seeing it, the public is seeing it, probably some of the parents are seeing it, some of the family members are seeing it. We want to offer an opportunity. There's this mentality of, you can't tell the police something. But some people really do want to tell us, but they want to find a way that really is anonymous. If we can provide that Tip 411, we'll provide that where we can also communicate with them. So I'm excited about getting Tip 411 here. I'm glad the City Council approved us being able to get these funds to do that. And so that's very important for us. Goal number 4 is this petition to revoke probation. So we've been in contact with probation. We're still in contact with them. There's some meetings in the near future with them. But one of the things that we want to push is the action to bring the cases back to court for resentencing. So we are looking at some things to find a way to revoke their probation and ask for that. I won't tell you what we're looking for because I don't want to give that information out, but we're having those conversations with probation. We're working with them hand in hand to get some evidence and information to them to see if there's ways to provoke the probation. We are seeing there's reoffenders that are out there. A lot of it in the juvenile aspect where juvenile is arrested, he's released, and he reoffends again, and it continues to happen. We see him on probation, we see him with ankle bracelets, cutting off ankle bracelets, et cetera, et cetera. I will tell you that the men and women at the Peoria Police Department, I'm always very proud to see the amount of work that comes out of them. I gave you the numbers of officers we have. They step up to the plate every day. They're here long hours. They're working extra hours. They put themselves on the line. I think you've seen the report from this past Monday. So it's obvious that we are working with our federal partners, and it's no secret. The marshals and ATF, it was in the news. That was no easy task to get to a point where these arrests were made. And there's chases and there's foot pursuits, and our officers put themselves in harm's way. But then, there's moments where we see that people are released, and our officers look at that and think to themselves, all this hard work we did, and now they're re-released. But that doesn't stop them to go back out there and continue to pursue these cases and re-arrest and continue to put them into the system. And then there's conversations, obviously, that we need to have with our courts and our state's attorneys, et cetera, and probation, and we're having those. Goal number 5 is how we respond to shots fired. When there's an incident of a shots fired, we're out on the scene, but what are we doing the next day? Going back out and recanvassing, knocking on doors, looking for more cameras, looking for people to speak with, coming out near the time that it occurred the day before to see if there's somebody home now that wasn't home when we were there the evening before, and continue to talk to them. But really then, get this information shared internally. We got 3 shifts of officers, we have investigators, and who went out, who collected what information, and how do we get that to our investigators. So patrol will go out the next day. Our day shift patrol lieutenant gets officers back out there in the streets again to go recanvass. Is there other evidence? Is there other people to speak with? And then making sure that we're documenting all that evidence, documenting who we spoke with, and getting that information back to our investigators to be able to continue to work on that case. So we have to be very intentional in how we communicate internally and externally. Our goal number 6 is, how are we doing, what's our investigative operations? And again, our undercover, our confidential sources, our confidential informants. Obviously, we won't go into great detail on some of those things, but those are operations that we continue to do. We will continue to work on building our confidential informants and confidential sources, and really working at an undercover capacity to find guns, purchase guns and drugs that are out there. Guns and drugs will go together, right? And so we will continue to do that. They have been doing that, but that's something that we'll continue to be doing. We won't go too deep into that, obviously, because we don't want to talk about who our confidential informants are or any of that. So there's things that we're going to continue to do on that investigative side. Goal number 7, which is always a big question, is what's our communication like in coordination with the state's attorney? We continue to have conversations with the state's attorney. We'll continue to have those and request higher bonds and longer sentencing. We're in the process of having some conversations with the judges and sitting down in front of the chief judge along with the other judges to continue the conversations, as well as having conversations with our legislators. I've been in conversations with them about we need to look at the juvenile laws. We continue to have kids, and I say kids because they're kids, who continue to reoffend. We believe in restorative justice, and we need to have restorative justice measures in place, healing circles, community restitution, peer jury. We need to have all that in place because there is a place for that. And again, we're dealing with juveniles, we're dealing with kids, and there should be a mechanism in place to not put kids through this system. But then we also have kids or young adults who are juveniles who continue to reoffend and continue to, as well as adults. What we're seeing more and more is our juveniles that are doing this. And we need to be able to find a mechanism that if they're continuing to reoffend, we need to find a way to stop those reoffenses, whether they're locked up longer or whether there's some other mechanism in place. But we need to talk to our state legislators, obviously our state's attorney, and looking at all those things. And those conversations are being had. I had several of those conversations this last week, and I have some meetings next week. And I'm supposed to go down to Springfield in January to continue some of these conversations with our state legislators. And so we're looking at how we change that. We can't change it as a police department. We can continue to go out and make the arrests, put them into the system, and hope that the judges they'll set higher bonds for some of these violent offenders, and we'll continue to have those conversations with them to pursue that. Goal number 8 is our community messaging. What is it that we want to put out there, and how do we get it out there? I meet once a month. I'm meeting with women who have been connected to the violence. It's something that I don't share much. I don't invite the media to it. But I think it's important for the community to know now that we meet. And there's women who are survivors of this violence. They lost a child, they lost a husband, they lost a nephew, it's a boyfriend, a grandson. And we have women from these different sectors that, are still trying to deal with what occurred. How do they deal with it? How do we help them heal so that they can help us in turn tamp the violence down on the back end? I say this all the time, and I say it jokingly, but I mean it. When I'm mad at home, nobody cares, but when my wife is mad, everybody's walking on eggshells, right? So I think the power of the woman is very strong, and if we can harness that to have them in those areas come united and help us tamp the violence down and speak to these young men or women that are out there committing the violence and put some pressure on it from their end. But we also have to help them figure out how do they move forward, how can they heal, what is the next steps for them, and those are the conversations we're having. And not one of these things by itself is going to be the remedy. I think it's everything working together, working as a community, really trying to solve the issue. So as a long-term, community messaging is one of those. And then, how do we, what's our message that's going out there? We want to create a video. We want to create some messaging that we want to put out, and that's all part of that. Long-term is our gun buyback program that we want to do. I think a gun buyback program, again, by itself is not going to solve the issue. People criticize it, or you're just going to get some old guns. And if I can get any gun, I'll take it. But if we can do a gun buyback program, and there's conversations with some third-party stakeholders where we're not necessarily involved as receiving the guns, because I don't think people want to come and walk up to the police and give us the guns. But we can have a third-party stakeholder that will collect it. We're not involved in it. Then they're turned into us, and then we just have to do our work to figure out where the guns came from and are they linked to any crimes. But the point is for us just to get the guns. I don't need to know who turned in the gun, and if we can kind of stay away from that portion of it when they're being turned in, I think people will be more apt to turn them in. Mothers and grandmothers who find these guns won't be as worried as they're the ones turning in their child, because we won't know where the gun came from, right? We just want to get the guns off of the street. We may not be able, at this point, we can't link it to anything. I'd rather get the gun so it's not used again. Number 10, our outside agency partnerships. Now, it's no secret, and again, there's some of the things we do with our federal agencies are going to be very secretive. Our federal agencies work at that level, and so I'll leave it at that. I mean, the newspaper kind of put it out there for us, ATF, Marshals on this last one, but we work with all our federal agencies, and we will continue to do that, and those partnerships continue to be stronger. Goal 11 is to look at ordinances and legislation about the possibility of safe securing of firearms, and as well as legislation in regards to juveniles and prolific offenders. Talked about that earlier. We're having those conversations. We will talk about, we see that our cannabis shops have to have more security than our gun shops. You can walk into a gun shop, kick in the door, and guns are laying around. You go to a cannabis shop, I haven't been to one, you go to a cannabis shop, and you got to have cameras, you got to have security, and it's, so why are the laws so different on that? But what we're seeing is these guns on the street. So we need to be able to now put some stronger laws in place through our legislation on these gun shops. And so in goal number 12 on this is our nuisance abatement. And this is something that we will work with legal on, in abating a house and closing off properties and taking houses if we can at some point. We have some guidelines that we need to follow. We need to look at that. I don't want to look at nuisance abatement through a code enforcement lens. We will be looking at it on our end through a law enforcement perspective. Are these crimes that fall into the category occurring? Are we documenting appropriately? Are we reaching out to landlords? Are we talking to landlords? Are we giving the opportunity to correct the issues, get tenants out of there that need to get out of there? Are we working on that? And then if that doesn't work, we need to start moving into looking at how nuisance abatement would work for us. So those are those 12. I will say I've heard many ideas. I've had many people come see me at the police department and have ideas of how we are going to curtail crime and things that we need to do and how we're going to do it. I'm always willing and open to sit down and talk to anybody. I have an open door policy at the police department, but there's going to be some things that we're just going to say no to. We can't, and I'll give an example. I can't house juveniles at the police department. I can't have students from a school who aren't doing well be housed at a police department and be taught at a police department and secured there. It is not a school, it is not a daycare, it is a police department. And I can't secure them there. I don't have the facilities to do that, and I don't have the personnel to do that. But I am open to listen to whatever ideas there are There's been great ideas that have come, and we'll look at them. I continue to tell the public, if you have cameras, we'd like to know where they're at. If there's somehow we can help you, what things we can share with you. I have many conversations in my office, and sometimes I share a little bit more than I would in a public setting. But we're always open to listening and figuring out what the issues are. This is a community issue. It's not just a police problem. We lose sleep every day on it. I can tell you as the chief of police, I lose sleep about these kind of things. We need to have a community, no matter what we do. If our community doesn't feel safe, none of this really matters at the end of the day. I need the community to feel safe. I want you to be able to walk outside and walk with your family, walk down to the corner store, walk wherever, and feel safe. And that's what I lose sleep on, and I know that my command staff does the same, and we sit down every week, and we come back on a Monday, and we're in the office trying to figure out, okay, what's the next move? Who did what? I will tell you, there's some things that we obviously need to continue to press on and work on. I stepped up in front of the camera yesterday and gave a warning, if you will, to those that are committing crime, and I mean that. They wanted our attention, now they got our attention. Not that they didn't have it before, but I never spoken to them directly. I am speaking to them directly. We are going to be out there. Officers are going to be seen. Some officers aren't going to be seen because we're not going to always be seen, but we're going to be out there. Okay? So I want to share some stats. So we've had 1,424 ShotSpotter alerts in the city year to date. 5,806 rounds have been fired. This is a lot. We're up by 19%. So you see we've had 143 people hit by gunfire in 2021. And I will tell you, we don't hide our numbers. So if there's a graze wound, so some of these past numbers will be off a little bit. Graze wounds weren't counted. I know that if a bullet grazed my son's skin, to me, he got hit by a bullet. So we have 143 people that have been hit by gunshots. 33 of those are homicide, 33 homicides, and 27 of those have been by a shooting. So this is your area code, 61606, correct? In this area, compared to last year, crime is down by 24%. Down 6% for firearm offenses from 79 to 74. Down in battery offenses from 41 to 32. Drug offenses down from 31 to 17. Domestic batteries are down from 82 to 53. Burglaries are down by 61%, from 61 to 24. And arson is down by 73%, from 11 to 3. The bad news is our armed robberies have gone up. They've doubled from 5 to 10. Hence why we will be in there. We will be seeing, we will be stopping people, we will be talking to them, we'll be stopping these vehicles based on the data that we see and the evidence that we see. Criminal sexual assault, which is very hard for us to control, right? This is, I think these numbers have gone up. We see it with COVID, but from 4 to 16%, but to 16 in 2021. And criminal damage from 123 up 9% to 134. And I don't know if you guys can see the screen, but I wanted to kind of just give you a breakdown of, and I won't go through this, and I can send this to whoever wants it to get, that they can see it. I don't know how to send it to everybody, but kind of gives you a breakdown of what the major incidents are in this neighborhood, where we're up, where it's down. But real important is, the calls for service, where we see them. Where we're seeing the most calls for service will be between 7 o'clock in the morning and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So when I talk about looking at data, this is the data that we're looking at. So that tells us that our day shift lieutenant and the day shift investigators, this is an area that we need to be in. And it's up by, if I can see here, 6%, I believe, during that time. Everywhere else, it's gone down. Between midnight and 6 in the morning, it's gone down 10%. And between 4 o'clock and 11 o'clock in the evening, it's gone down 7%. Doesn't mean we're not going to be out there during these times, but again, we want to look at the data, and where's the data tell us that we need to be. That's the end of the slideshow. There's some other things I want to talk about that we will continue to work on. I want to show you, I want to pull up another map to give you another perspective. So where you see, so when I talk about, when we talk about can you guys see that? When we talk about the evidence and where we need to be, those red spots that you see on the map are going to be our hot spots in the city. This is year-to-date shooting incidents where it's high. This is where we're going to be looking at. These are the places. But again, when we see an uptick somewhere else, we're also going to be responding to those areas. But we know where we need to be based on the colors of these maps and where these hot spots are at. And again, this is something that I can, if there's an email group that they can go to, we can send this to so you can have it and see it and understand kind of where we are seeing the violence occurring. But we, again, people ask, this is not a stop and frisk. This is data-driven, evidence-driven. We're going to be out in the community and really just being out there, being more visual, being more intentional to be seen, and really opening up more the lines of communication. So the questions that you may have may be answered in advance as to what exactly the police department is doing. There is a plan. And again, some of the things we really keep a bit secretive in the sense that we don't want the bad guy, if you will, to know our game plan. One of the things I talked about is really removing stuff off of the plates of our officers. We're looking at trying to establish an online portal for reports. So there are reports that you can do online and an officer doesn't need to respond, freeing up time for our officers on the street. The question has been asked is, you guys are locking up the lobby, why? Well, in the afternoon, in the evening times, after 5 o'clock, we have a sergeant that just sits at the front desk. Oftentimes, nobody is coming in. Maybe once or twice somebody comes in. The amount of service that the community is going to get is still going to be there. There's a phone in the vestibule that we've moved out to the vestibule. They can pick up the phone. It immediately goes to our dispatch center, and we will dispatch an officer to come handle the whatever's happening at the desk, whatever's happening in our lobby. We'll have somebody be able to respond to that. Oftentimes, there's supervisors already in the station doing other work, but there's no need for us to have an officer, or a supervisor specifically, sitting on the front desk when we can have that officer on the street really providing a better service for our community, making sure officers are where they need to be, providing the information officers need, and really supervising what's going on. And that's really the purpose for that, and I want to make sure that I was clear on that, that it's not that we've closed it and you can't come in. When it's cold outside and we need to open it as a warming shelter, it'll be open as a warming shelter. All those things will still be in place. But I need to take the resources I have and put them to use. And I need the officers on the street, and I need the supervisors on the street. And lastly, one of the other things that we are working on is a co-response model for responding to persons with mental illness. And when we see these numbers are very high, we get over 500 calls for mental illness a year or more. And there'll be more than that because some of them aren't categorized exactly correctly because of who responds, whether it's AMT, ERS. We are creating, in conjunction with the Department of Public Health, Unity Place, ERS, AMT, we are looking at creating this co-response model where we have officers that are specifically trained in crisis intervention, de-escalation, specifically some of our SRT officers who have the training in responding to this type of calls, to be driving around with a mental health worker, having social workers in our juvenile division and in our major crimes division to touch on all our domestic violence cases or on the other cases that we need to come around and provide some type of wraparound service or some case management, if you will, and specifically in our juvenile to touch all juvenile cases. We don't want to continue to have juveniles coming through. Some of them we just need to follow up, and mom may need some help, son may need some other directions, and we want to be able to provide those other services, those other restorative measures for them to keep them out of the system and have them be productive members of society. And we want to continue to follow up and have their case management along with our homeless population, those that are substance abuse, alcohol abuse, that all kind of ties together into this. I have been supposed to go in January down to Springfield, and we want to push this into legislation. Jahan Gordon Booth, state representative, wants to push this into a bill, and we are currently working on that. And so the hopes is that this becomes a line item for us, and we have money to continue to provide these services and really help out this part of our community. But in turn, freeing up this time that our officers are spending on these calls to be out, being able to do more proactive work. I don't know how long I spoke. I will stop there. And I'll ask my counterparts to come on up here, and we will open this up for questions. Or I didn't know if you were presenting somebody else, or I was done at this point.
It's time for Q&A.
Q&A time. So,
To get us started, I think it would be helpful if you talked about what you call the hyper gangs.
Oh, yes, yes.
The increase of this violence is a
Yes.
lot different
Yes.
than traditional gangs, and explain that.
yes, absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up. I've had this conversation with the council members, and I'll explain it. People often ask, do we have gangs? Well, when you look at what I think about as gangs, and I'll break it down. I come from the Chicagoland area. People, folks, there's this straight divide where you got maniacs, Latin Kings, vice lords, SVL, Sudeños, Norteños, Deuces. I could keep on naming gangs. Who their main function is to really make money at the end of the day. What we're seeing here in Peoria is kids that have come together and put a name to themselves to create chaos and disorder. There is no hierarchy like you would see in a traditional gang, and that's why I call it this hybrid gangs. There's no tradition, there's no manifest, there's no order, there's no regulations, there's no hierarchy, nobody who's in charge, there's none of that. They steal cars, they cause havoc, they steal cars to joyride and then toss them and damage them. They don't even take parts off them, they don't do anything. There's no money behind it. So money drives a lot of our gangs because they want to have money. And I'll give an example without giving the name. So when I first started here 5 months ago, there was a name that continued to come across my desk about a complaint in a neighborhood. There was a business, and the business had a lot of people coming in and out. People were parking all over the place, loud music. I really got to meet my councilman right here quite a bit through email and phone calls because of this person. And I made a decision is I need to go talk to this person. The information I received was this person was a known drug dealer, an old-time gangster, if you will, that's been around a long time. And I went and had a conversation with him, and I said to him, I don't know you, you don't know me, there's a problem going on in this area. And in short, he says to me he didn't want any problems with me. We traded phone numbers, and I said to him that I would be calling him anytime there's a problem. He immediately sent out a message on Facebook that if you're coming to his business, here are the rules. He put some no parking signs on his business. He did some things on the street so people wouldn't park. And I never got another single complaint from that community. Rather, I got some compliments that went to the councilman that they were happy with the resolution. I've asked to get in front of these kids and these juveniles and these hybrid gangs to have a conversation. The OGs, if you will, this older group doesn't even want to talk to them. I've asked, I said, can you talk to them? Nope, they will shoot us. And so you can talk to these other older gang members, if you will, because they're driven by money and they don't want any attention from the police. This hybrid group for gangs, or this hybrid group, doesn't care. They don't care about the attention. They will drive around town. You have seen the reports. They will race they will hang out their cars with guns. These are the groups that we are working with and trying to get in front of it. And we can't get in front of them to have a conversation because they're not driven by anything other than chaos. And so that's the best way I could explain it, and I explain it to the council members that way, is there is no hierarchy, there is no order. this is what we're dealing with. And this is why we have to have some legislations that's changed. We need to make sure that the state's attorney is properly pursuing these cases, and we have those conversations, and we have a great relationship with the state's attorney, and we'll continue to do that. And so we'll continue to go out and make the arrest, continue to put them where they need to go, and that they get released again, we'll continue to do what we're doing, and we'll try to have these conversations with our legislators to get some things changed. So.
But so immediately, what are you doing to try to put a stop to the increase in the nonviolence and armed robberies that you guys are doing?
Right, and that's why where I spoke about earlier is taking these officers from these other divisions and putting them into one division to strictly focus in these areas and the times that the data shows that this is occurring. So there's a lot of things behind the scenes that we do that we won't say. There's things that we're looking at, there's things that we're doing, there's people that we're talking to. But the main thing is we're taking as much as our resources that we can and our manpower and pushing them into these areas to really combat this, if that makes sense. Okay. I open it up for questions. Yes, sir.
First, thank you all for coming and spending the time with us. One of my questions is when it comes to the mental health.
Yes.
We have an issue with a gentleman who panhandles at the corner of Main and Sheridan. And I had a conversation with one of the local officers, and he said they have offered him all kinds of help, but he refuses.
Yes.
In a situation like that, what's the next step?
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons that I've called and spoke with IDPH and Unity Place and looking at how we are going to be able to respond to this, right? They're going to need to want help. How do we involuntarily commit them? Those are one of the things we need to do. You know, the police are often asked to do jobs that is not their job to do, specifically, right? Mental health. But this is why we have to take ownership, because these other entities can't seem to get the real grasp on it, so we have to come together, and that's the reason we're coming together to figure out we can't continue to take them to an ER and waste the hospital's resources on that, but how do we get them into Unity Place, into another place? What are the other resources? Where's the case management on this? Where do we continue to follow up? There has to be more of a daily contact with them. Which reminds me is one of the things that we're looking at as well is how do we redistrict our zones, our policing districts. We're in the process of doing that. I told my crime analyst we only got one shot at getting this right. There's a committee in the police department composed of different officers from every division, because he's looking at it from a data perspective, but I need a real life perspective. What are the officers seeing on the street? And now how do we take the resources we have and deploy them? And one of the things that I've asked is that we create a downtown business district itself. I want officers on foot. I want officers on UTVs. I want officers on bikes. We see what the downtown is growing into. And I want to have officers that are just downtown, walking up and down, walking a beat, stopping in the businesses, saying hi, getting a cup of coffee, talking to people, and moving our panhandlers along, right? But also having our social workers in place and this ERS group, this emergency services group that we would call it, being able to continue to have conversations. We don't have that now. When we have that in place, we will be able to continue to check on him, talk to him, move him along, offer him some service, find where he can live, where do you need to go. This is not an uncommon story for cities like this. I can name a person that had the same thing in another city, and it's taken years to really find a place to get them. Sometimes it's the mental hospital, and that's where they end up. But that itself is a whole nother process, but we need to have the proper partnerships in place to really be able to work that. And that's why we want to look at this mental health group.
In instances like that, is there an alternative for us to make contact with some other resource in the community rather than taking the police's time on such issues?
You know, I always say is, you know, the ERS is there, and ERS responds to these calls. But I don't know if ERS, I don't believe so. I think you would call 911 and they would dispatch that call if it's for ERS. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? But I always say call 911. We don't know what you're seeing in that moment. What are they going through? What is there something else? And most of the time, the mental health workers don't want to respond by themselves either, and that's why we respond with them. So.
Can you talk about part of the problem
Yeah, our hands are, well,
Hands are a bit tied, they haven't been able to just arrest, issue an ordinance ticket, arrest them, and put them in jail for that.
and there has to be some aggressive panhandling. Are they pounding on your window? Are they cussing you, right? There's some other things that we have to look at, but standing out there with a sign, now, we have told our officers, and we tell them out there is, if they're standing in the middle of the road, they need to move out of the middle of the road because they're going to cause an accident or they're going to get hit by a car. And so there's a safety issue there. But if they're standing in a corner outside of the lane somewhere else, it's very difficult for us to enforce something there. Yes, sir.
I think we're talking about the gentleman named Eugene. I
Oh.
think it's pretty bad that we know our panhandling things on everybody's car door window.
Yeah.
You see him every day doing it.
Yes.
He's been on my vehicle, you see him doing it, you watch traffic every day. If you see Eugene, he's in the middle of the street. So that's a constant safety hazard, so I don't know how we can call the guy that lives in the street.
Yeah. And we see him, and we deal with him. He's been arrested many a times. Eugene has some mental issues, and we need to find a way to get him that help, and we need to get the stakeholders that need to be in place to figure out how we get him. He needs to be at the end of the day, he needs to be involuntarily committed. He can't self-suffice. He can't help himself, and so he needs to be involuntarily committed.
Just as a follow-up to that, I think you just kind of hit the nail on the head. You've arrested him countless times, and nothing has changed. You said it before, nothing changes when you guys try hard to put someone in jail, and they're right back out. We have no cash bail, we have these non-trespassing things you can't enforce. We've got all of these things out there that is just a constant degradation of our rights to become more of a victim than it is to help cure these problems. So, so for us, I don't want to be in your shoes, I can imagine how frustrating it is, but for us to support you is difficult when we get no feedback in a positive way to try to help these problems go away.
Yeah, and I understand the frustration. I get it. We're dealing with people with mental health, and the jails aren't going to keep them, right? There's some other underlying issues. We need to approach it a different way, and that's where this mental health co-response and talking about how we get the help to them. And sometimes it's a long process, and I'm hoping it won't be so long anymore. We're moving forward on this model. We're doing some site visits here in the near future in January to see how some other agencies. I came from Elgin. Fort Collins has a model, a co-response model that's been very successful. That chief came from Elgin. Elgin has a co-response model. From when I was there, that we visited the UK, we visited New York, to see how those responses were out there and what we can build there. So the homework's been done. So I'm taking a group here from Peoria that hasn't seen this to see firsthand how this works and how these community stakeholders can have a piece of this and work together to handle those issues. I understand the frustration, I get it, and this is why I'm pushing on this co-response model to get the help they need to get them off there, because it ain't going to be cured with arrest, obviously. So we need to get them off the street and get them to the right place that they need to be.
Not to be rude, but is it possible to get like a little wave, kind of?
Like a little what?
Because he's kind of by the house
To get them away? Is
and
that,
not away, like maybe shift him somewhere else a little.
well, I don't know if somebody wants to offer some transportation somewhere and buy a plane ticket. I don't know, but I hear what you're saying. Again, we're dealing with mental health, and we need to get the right resources there to them. Go ahead.
I really appreciate the presentation and your use of data to inform your policing. Have you seen any data to support why there's been a rise in these hybrid gangs? And if there isn't any data yet on it, do you have any theories as to why?
Yeah, I haven't, and I'll rely on my peers like Lieutenant Keola, who oversees the investigation. If he's had anything, the hybrid portion of it here seems to be really new for me. Where I came from, there were some real gangs and there was some structure, and you can go talk to some of the gang leaders. I think what we're seeing is an influence, and we see it with the videos that they put out. There's this influence with this drill music and this lifestyle, and they feel like this is something they should be doing to go have fun. COVID didn't help the situation. Somehow COVID's related to this influx in crime that we see nationally. I don't have a real clear answer for you as to why, these kids. I will tell you, we're seeing kids that are out at 12, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. There's some lack of parenting as well there, right? There's some responsibility on the parents. We're not the parents. I shouldn't see kids that are 10, 11, 12, 13 years old out on the street at those times. I don't know what's occurring at home, why that's happening. There's probably some help that's needed there for those parents, and we're seeing younger parents having kids, younger people having kids, and I think there's probably something to do with that. And we're seeing single family households that parents have to go to work to maintain their family, and then there's nobody there to watch the kids, and where do you leave the kids while you're going to work, and now they're unsupervised. So I don't have a clear-cut answer on that, but there's many theories, but I do think there's a lot of different places where it just intersects. Lee?
Doesn't that have to do with the House bill that was passed, where the legislatures changed the categories for misdemeanors? Certain misdemeanors were no longer arrestable for juveniles. I know I was told by an officer at one point when they got me to vacant house that they can chase them, but they can't arrest them, they can only give them tickets. Well, if juveniles find out that we're not going to be arrested, all they're going to do is give us a ticket. It's kind of like they're just stamping our library card, so we can leave a book on the corner, and maybe somebody will pick it up. But these kids, it doesn't take, it's not rocket science to think that the law says we can't do this they can't do this to me. What the hell? I might as well just keep doing it.
There's definitely been some changes in the law. I saw Captain Briggs stepping up over here, and it looks like he oversees our juvenile division. You want to touch on that?
That's fine. I think what you're getting at, that law technically hasn't even taken effect yet. That actually with the trailer bill got pushed off. But what you're referring to with the juveniles has really been a problem over the last several years of some of the law changes in the ability to detain juveniles. And it really comes down to the fact of they are kids. So at what point in time do we say they're kids and still mold them into something else? And that's what the chief was talking about with restorative justice. Some of these offenders, I'm not going to lie, are to the point where, some of these offenders they're to the point where, whether they're 15, 16, 17 years old, we probably do need to have them locked back. And when I say they need to be locked back, it's because not only do we keep them off the streets and away from the other people that are forcing them, like the hybrid street gangs and all their friends, forcing them to do the bad things, you can get them help. I mean, kids doing certain things, they're doing them for a reason. They haven't had a parent in their life to teach them the right way. There could be some mental health issues, substance abuse problems, even at that age. So there are certain ones that probably we need to lock back and we need help. And that's hard because of the system, and we need to show that pattern, and they need to eventually be arrested so many times and score out and to be held back. But with the restorative justice program, hopefully we can take those kids and then we don't even get to that point. So that's one of the big pushes that we're doing at the police department, and that's going to take time, right? Unfortunately.
But at the same time, and I'm arguing.
No, that's fine.
At the same time, if you've got legislators saying, you can't do this, and they put it in a bill so it becomes a law, aren't your hands tied better? Because the kids know.
Ma'am, I wouldn't necessarily say our hands are tied, but on the flip side of that, we are law enforcement, right? We don't make the laws, we have to enforce them. So if the law is written the way the law is written, we do what we have to do, and sometimes the turnout is the turnout. So I know that's probably not the answer you're looking for, but
Is that the legislatures do this, you have to follow that, and we're the victims, especially if it's my property, so.
But I honestly don't think that's why these kids are getting put back. That's been the laws for as long as I've been, 30 years or more, 30 years. The new law that come out has, like you take place here. So this is not a new thing,
No, but it's still existing.
but part of it, I think the chief just brought up, is that they're not going back to revoking probation for juveniles or adults when they've had repeated crimes. That's been an issue, and he's trying to focus on that, working with the state's attorney to try to get them to do that. They haven't.
Yep.
And
Those discussions have already happened, and we have the avenue, like Chief said, we don't specifically want to say exactly what we're looking for, but there's specific things that these juveniles and really adults are doing as well that are on probation that should be enough for us to, I guess, go to the state's attorneys, and they would present the court with a petition to revoke, which then would hopefully revoke their probation, would lock them back for the time of their sentence.
that
So
has not been happening.
hopefully it will here real soon.
I'm sorry, the lady in the back had her hand up a long time.
My name's Maggie Westheim. I'm an assistant public defender in the juvenile division. So hopefully I can give a little bit more information. I think there's a couple missing pieces too, which is one thing I think as a community we don't realize is that when juveniles do get sent to the Department of Juvenile Justice for a crime, as a state, we are releasing those juveniles within like 3 to 6 months for a sentence. So they're not seeing a lot of punishment for their actions. And that's something that's beyond our local community. That's a statewide issue. And then also, I think the other missing link that's kind of been hinted at or touched on here is, you know, we've got this great plan from the police department, and I think it's a step in the right direction, which is great. And then we've got, you know, our own city council here, which is great. But what we're missing here tonight is our state's attorney. You know, somebody who I'm not even sure she knows where the 4th floor in the courthouse is because I've never seen her. So, I mean, it would be nice as a community, I think from a community perspective, to put the pressure on her, because that's really what it's going to come down to. Because you can have all this crime happen in our community, and we can arrest all the kids that we can arrest, but until we see action on that 4th floor of the courthouse, and I hate to say that because I'm a public defender, but, you know, there needs to be more action if we're going to see the impact in our community, and which comes from us calling our state's attorney's office and saying, you know, this has happened, or this is happening, or, you know, what's going on with this case, or why are we not seeing results? And granted, some of that is, you know, it's a closed courtroom. The identities of the juveniles are sealed and protected for their rights. But that doesn't mean we don't have the right to call as well and say, you know, I want to see action. That's her job. We've elected her to do that job. And like I said, we've got the police, we've got this great plan, but, you know, that plan's only going to get us so far as a community if we don't have the follow-through from the state's attorney's office. So, I mean, I think that there's a lot to that.
I want to say thank you, and yeah, great point. And I can tell you that everybody that's standing up here, and if we had the whole police department up here, there's that frustration. You know, we can pinpoint clearly. I'll say this: the arrest that happened on Monday, and I made sure I let the councilman know. We send out an email every day. There's an email of the significant events that occurred. There was an arrest made, and there was no significant events the next evening. That evening there was nothing. There's people that we've arrested, they get released, and we've had no crime or no specific crime occur, and a specific crime starts to occur, and we can pinpoint, this person is released. We're able to now figure out, okay, this person is attached to these crimes. They get rearrested, and below, there is no more of those crimes again. So, great point. Thank you, sir, in the plan.
Oh, yeah. Chief Eric, I just wanted to say that these are community problems we're talking about. We as members of the community have a vested interest in your success. And I think we have a responsibility to aid you in any way we possibly can. How can we do that?
This question gets asked quite a bit, and I always say, if you're seeing something, let us know. You're probably not the community who's not going to say anything. You're here, you're speaking up, you're telling us what we need to hear, you're direct with us. And that's what we need everybody else to do. We need the community to start talking, and when they see something, let us know. Point us in the right direction, because the community knows. There's people in the community that know who's committing a crime, when they're committing it, and some of them are part of it. We have adults who are contributing to the delinquency of those minors, and we need to hold them responsible as well. So that's what I ask. We appreciate the support, but we also understand, we're accountable to you, and we are, and we're going to continue to do that, and we're not going to shy away from that. If there's, send the hard messages to us, let us know what you're seeing, hit us with the hard questions. We will be here to continue to support the community. We want the community to be safer. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Because I've seen things on my own street and I'm kind of like frustrated by, or way more than frustrated by, really pissed off about, and I don't know what to do about it. I don't want to call 911 because I'm like, okay, it's a guy that just passed me, cut me off, put me off, all this kind of stuff in a 20-mile-per-hour zone, and I'm like, I don't know who to call.
Yeah, I would say is get that information. You can definitely call 911 and get that information. We'll get it. But with this new app that's coming out January 3rd, get the app on your phone. We're ready to launch the app. We just want to make sure we want people to get it. So January 3rd, get that app, send us the information. There is a way for our detectives and officers. It'll be given to where it needs to go, and we will be following up on those. So that's why that app is going in. We want to be able to open up more lines of communication. In that same thing, we're looking at a way to have a monthly meeting, a Chiefs monthly meeting, where the community can come into the police department. I know with COVID, there's some hiccups here, so we're trying to figure out how we can do it. I think it's better this way in person than it is on a Zoom meeting. I'd rather be able to talk to you in person, and we can dialogue and have some conversations, and we're going to start that where there'll be these monthly meetings with the chief and command staff and different people from different parts of the department. So if there's questions and answers or issues, we can immediately say, okay, hey, NSU, she's got this issue. Talk to her, figure out what we need to do. There's this parking issue over there. We're going to have parking control at the police department. Here, let's get this over there. Where's it at? And get those resources quickly to you. And so that's part of that, also opening up those lines of communication with the community. Yep, you can.
Generally, the people that live on my street, we talk about our frustrations. We're on one side of it. It's like everyone's just, killing it with so many violations.
Yeah. And if there's speeding issues, we have a traffic unit, and we can deploy traffic into that area and say, check it. I will tell you from experience, it's going to be your own neighbors speeding through your community. It's going to be your own neighbors doing that. But that's what happens, and that's what occurs. And if we need to go out there and we need to put a speed trailer and we need to do some things, we can do that as well. Yeah.
Every day, yesterday, they cut you off, flip you off, slam on the brakes in front of you. This is 20 miles an hour.
And it's not only in that neighborhood. It's happening all across the city. But if we don't know that it's happening in that area specifically, and you're seeing it continuously, we can deploy some resources into that to do some traffic control. Yeah, absolutely. And we've done that. I think.
Yeah, we've asked for increased traffic enforcement at different times.
And
Officer McCall can talk about
yeah, he oversees the traffic. Let me introduce you to Lieutenant McCall. I've been speaking a lot. He handles traffic.
Lieutenant McCall, 25-year police officer, born and raised in Peoria. It's frustrating. We get the calls all the time. Somebody driving through my neighborhood, they're speeding, my kids on the way to school. What you going to do about it? We put officers out there, and come behold, it's the neighbor. It's the neighbor. So then we're caught in between. If we give too many tickets, and people get frustrated with us because, hey, I'm going to work, and we don't want to stop and give tickets to working people. But at the same time, we want to answer your concern. But as far as getting a hold of us, you can always call the non-emergency number, which is 673-4521. Ask to speak with a supervisor or specifically with a traffic officer, and we will hear your concern, and we'll open up a traffic project. And it's a 30-day period we go through, and we find out what's going on in that specific street or neighborhood, and we'll get back with you with the data.
So even though one incident happened yesterday, and I did get his license plate because he was doing me, trying to scare me, spoke past me, cut me off, and then slammed on his brakes, so I almost hit him. So I got his license plate, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with this, and I don't have time to mess around with trying to I called the because somebody threw a closing hardware while I was doing yard work, exploded right next to me all over my driveway. And I'm like, I don't want to take an hour and a half out of my day to sit here every single time something like that happens. And then the officer says, just keep calling, just keep calling. I don't want to do that. I have a life, you know? So I get so upset to the point where I'm like, I've been here not even 4 years and I'm questioning why I moved here for them. You know, I'm like, I don't like this. It has to change. And I spent a whole lot of money to live there, way more than I spent on the that. And I'm like, why? Why did I do this? I'm scared to go out and I'm walking my dogs at night. I just seen so much going on and I'm like, I don't even know what to do about it because I don't have time to file a report. So I guess the app is going to be a good thing. I hope something comes of that. But I feel pretty hopeless, you know, and I think a lot of neighbors do.
Well,
Let me close the street. No, I'm not good.
Something like that. Great.
Something brought up.
I mean, I think there are things that we can do to make it right. We have to talk about it in our homes, and I'm not talking about it.
right.
The stop sign at Drury and Moss is a joke. Just take it down. I mean, sometimes it's cool down a little bit, but this is why we have a drag strip. When they put the platform in on University Main, everybody was driving, they discovered Union Hill, and we bring so many people now through our neighborhood. It's been growing, getting faster. Bob's that's not here, but he was pulling this driveway and they left that turn. All the time pulling around, pulling this right, someone passed him on the left. This is a residential neighborhood. I don't see the speed bumps, the ones between University and High. You can tell what happened, pictures of these cars was left, but you can take one on the other end really fast. It doesn't even slow down.
Well, we get with Public Works and look at it doing the traffic study. On that, I can tell you that since COVID-19, we have seen an uptick in traffic violations all across the state, city, and country. You know, I don't know what it is, but people feel free to, you know, violate traffic laws. But as far as you're concerned, I'll get with you after the meeting and get my information to you.
I don't know if you're the person I talked to.
Because I know right at stop sign, and you know what, periodically they'll put an officer there. I mean, I think you just try to take this off as you want.
Well, just like any other crime, we
They're like, that's Chicago, you guys do your wish.
yeah, we get in the area, we do enforcement, we leave, everybody knows we're gone, and then the behavior continues. And we come back, write tickets, you know, be in the area, leave, and the behavior continues. So I don't know how to answer that, but we're trying, and we're there.
And won't the cameras also help?
Yeah,
with
absolutely.
that?
Yeah.
We're going to put some cameras out in parts of our neighborhood along with the rest of the city, which he was talking about in the beginning of his presentation, which will also
And again,
people shooting, but also get people that are speeding.
yeah, and the other part is, again, what I spoken about in general is freeing up time for the officers with the other things that we're doing, putting in place, so they can be out there proactively looking at these things. If we continue to just react to calls, where's the time to look at that or look at these other concerns? And
Chief, we
we're
have
doing that.
time for one more question over here, and then I'm going to ask the city manager to come up here and speak. Go ahead and answer.
So I am very happy and pleased to say I've been a part of this lovely Moss Bradley community for 15 years now. And as you touched upon earlier with COVID onslaught, it seems to be aggressive driving has become even more impactful throughout our whole community. So like many of you, I've experienced making left-hand turns out of my driveway, into my driveway on Moss, and been passed on the left. Been turning right out of my driveway, almost getting head on by somebody passing on the left on the street. I've been passed on Union Hill on the left. But where I'd like to go with this is it's not just confined to Union Hill, Ross Avenue. The aggressive driving is, I've noticed it all the way down to University, most intently from 74 to through the intersection, they dive into that turn lane like a regular lane, and either the left or they jump in front of the ongoing traffic on University. So as a mom, a driver that's going to be coming up in a couple of years, I have concerns in our lovely community and neighborhood that is seeing a turnover with more young families and kids. I open up my door, I let my 13-year-old hop on his bike and go down the street to a neighbor's house. So when is that person making that illegal left pass going to cause that person that's doing the right thing to swerve into my neighbor's yard and hit one of her kids that's playing football? Or to the Bradley community, we have, the soccer team, the softball team, all kinds of sports teams, running teams that jog up and down Moss Avenue. Many of us jog up and down Moss Avenue. At what point is that driver going to react and swerve the wrong way? These people that are cutting us off and doing this are going to hit us, but they're not going to stop and see if we're okay. And my, new driver isn't going to have the wherewithal to take a picture of the license plate and report them. So I am thrilled to hear that there's the opportunity to have cameras, because I think that maybe if the camera can catch them, and then the police, if they have time, can go to work on stopping them. I don't think that they're rushing home to get dinner on the table. I think they're leaving an area of concern to go to another area of concern, and we just happen to be in the community that they pass through, and it's not just Congress.
Absolutely, and there's 16 cameras that are going to be going up in and around these whole areas. I won't say where, but there are going to be some in there, and that'll be another tool for us. And again, excuse me? No, those won't. We'll be getting speed, but we'll be able to get, obviously, the place, the make and model, and those other things. It won't get speed, no. Yeah, we'll be able to see if it's pointed that way. Yes, absolutely. So it depends on where it's pointed. But Lieutenant McCall can get with both of you and get some of that information, and we can get a look at that. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. I hope everybody has a good new year. I will leave my business cards to whoever wants them. I've said it. I have an open door policy. People have reached out, have met me in my office. I'll meet you somewhere else. And we're always open to hear your concerns and have that dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe some of the concerns that have been voiced here will be taken care of by some of these new technologies. I have personally spoken to the manager and the police chief about better conversations with the state's attorney's office, the juvenile system itself, in accord with the observations made by the lady in the stands, shall we say. Manager, I thank you very much for coming as well. Patrick Urick, it wouldn't be a meeting unless you made a few comments. Come on up.
Thanks, Councilman, and thank you all for coming out this evening. It's very important that we get the feedback tonight that we heard from you. I think I want to express my appreciation to the police chief for the strategy that he's put together here to try and address crime, not only in the West Bluff. I'm a resident of the West Bluff as well, in the Uplands, but citywide. Obviously, this is a point of concern. Obviously, gun crime is a significant issue that we need to address. It's something that we need to look forward to. One point I think I want to make, though, is that your concerns about some of the legislative issues, talk to your legislators, talk to Representative Gordon Booth, talk to Senator Kaler, let them know your concerns about crime in the neighborhoods as well. They write the laws, right? I mean, we can, the council can work on legislative issues at a citywide level, but at a state level, they are the people that are advocating for us, and they need to hear from you as well. So thank you all for being here this evening, and I wish everyone a peaceful and safe 2022.
Thank you all.
I wanted everybody to know that Latrina Leary, I don't think we acknowledged you, the township supervisor. I seen you from back here. Want to make sure we acknowledge that you were here as well. Thank you.
And County Board Chairman Andrew Reyes.
Where,
There
you go.
How about Stephanie Tarr? Is she gone?
There she is in the back.
And our city clerk, Stephanie Tarr.
Did we miss anybody else?